you want someone to know the real you. Like we all want to be seen. We want to be known. It's the most basic human need, is just the need to be known. But for me to be known, for somebody to truly know me, I have to be real with other people. And so I'm likely to follow a leader who's real. I'm likely to be more vulnerable with a leader who's vulnerable. And vulnerability begets vulnerability.
This is Spartan!
Welcome back to another episode of Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And man, today I'm excited. I not only get to spend some time with one of my best friends in the world, but you all get to get introduced to Jordan Montgomery, who is a performance coach, keynote speaker, and owner of Montgomery Companies, amongst many other things, and not the least of which, a very awesome father. So he's one of the greatest leaders that I know. I've had a pleasure of knowing. He's probably one of the best speakers I personally know, if not one of the best speakers on the planet as it is. But everyone, please welcome and joining Jordan Montgomery to the show.
Josh, thanks for having me, man. This is an honor. We've been talking about this for a while, and fun to do this, man, with your new studio and on your new property. This is just a joy. So appreciate you.
Well, and you're in your new office as well. So we're getting used to new digs, right?
That's right. New space, man. That's right.
That's right. All right. So you focus on helping business executives, sales orgs, athletes, entrepreneurs, and probably a slew more that we haven't even discussed, or I just don't have time to list off all the people that you're helping and to enhance their business strategies. But let's rewind. Let's go back to some of the early days, how you got into this, and what's made you be able to connect with such a powerful, I don't even know, like many niches of markets. But let's talk a little bit where you came from. I know, obviously, we've known each other for a long time, but I want the audience to hear a little bit more about where Jordan Montgomery came from.
Yeah, well, much like you, man, I think, small town America. I think my town was slightly smaller than the town that you grew up in, just outside of Madison. But I grew up in Kelowna, Iowa, little Amish town. It's the largest Amish community west of the Mississippi. So it's a 2,500 person, one stoplight, don't blink kind of town. Dad was a painter, mom's a teacher. They taught me the power of hard work. Had an older brother who's now my business partner, which is kind of fun.
What's up, Jay? Shout out to Jay.
What's up, Jay Montgomery? We love you. So yeah, man, I went to a small little school in Southeast Iowa, then went to the University of Iowa, your favorite school, go Hawks.
Come on.
And, like for me, it's probably like for you, right? Like when you're at Whitewater, like for me, it was a social experiment. I just wanted to go to school to meet people and have fun, thinking that I would graduate and start my own business. I just wanted to be an entrepreneur like my dad. And while there's a lot of things about my dad's business I did not admire, he was a painting contractor and I was never very good with my hands. You know that, Josh. I did value his autonomy and I admired his autonomy. He was at every one of my games. He was at every one of my events. He was always in the stands. He was early. He was present. And I wanted that for my children and my family. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to own my own business. I'm going to call the shots. I'm going to control my time and I'm going to live life by design. Well, when I got out of school, I realized I had no money and no experience. And so I needed to find a business where I could be in business for myself, but not by myself. And so I started in financial services, had a good run. We're still close to financial services now. I'm no longer a financial advisor. You know that story. And I'm happy to dive into that and talk about that. But, we kind of ended up here. Like, I don't know that I set out to be a performance coach and a consultant and a keynote speaker. I think many of my life's experiences have led me here. And, I'm thankful for the opportunity that we have today. Every day is a little bit different. My wife runs the business. I run my mouth. We've got a team of 16 people. Most of them are independent contractors. My brother's with us full time. And we get to serve sales leaders, athletes, entrepreneurs, people in a bunch of different industries all across the country. And it's a ton of fun, but it's a crazy story of twists and turns in terms of how we arrived at the work and the company.
Yeah, very many twists and turns. I wouldn't say you just landed there though, because obviously you were a leader in the financial services world, just like I was, and you're recruiting and developing people at a really high level. And very much like I was, we're taking that into many other fields instead of just building our own little offices or bigger offices in respective communities. You get to take that message nationwide. So speaking of that, how different is it to communicate to a collegiate football player or team, right? So for those that don't know, it's the Central Arkansas Bears, right?
That's right.
Go Bears,
Bears.
right?
Got it.
So
Yep.
you were highly involved and been really highly involved with that program and team and that coaching staff for the last couple of years. And so you're talking to the team, motivating the team, lifting up the players that are 18 to 22 years old. And in the very next breath, or maybe hour or day, you're talking to CEOs running multi-million-dollar organizations. So talk a little bit about that dichotomy and the messages and what you're sharing between those two different lives, I should say.
Well, and you know this better than anyone from all your years in leadership, Josh, and the work that you do now is, leadership is about listening and it's about asking a lot of questions. I've had to learn that. I used to think that leadership was all about speaking and communicating. I thought leading was about teaching and training and speaking. And I've just learned that leadership is actually about asking questions. It's about listening. People grow more when you ask questions than when you give them answers. And so I've tried to put myself in a situation where I can seek first to understand before I attempt to be understood. So I'm generally just asking a question: what does my audience need? What does this group need? What does this team need? Try to observe. I try to get on site and be around that group or that team for a while before I start to open my mouth or share any kind of advice or feedback. So I think a lot of our work, and again, this is observation, and it's listening, and it's spending time with people. It's getting to know people. It's getting to know the problems, the issues, the challenges. I'm not a communicator. Some people can do this. This has just never been my style, where I get on a stage, I kind of fly in, fly out. I don't really know anyone in the audience, but I give a big keynote and then I leave. I guess I'll say this: I can do that, but to me, it's never felt as meaningful. And I know there's a lot of people that do that, and there's no disrespect. I think there's a lot of people that do that work and they're in and out and they can drive a ton of impact. For me, I've always been highly relational, and I have found that I can have greater impact if I know the audience. And I might not know, everybody in the audience, and certainly I can't know all their issues and challenges, but I at least know the culture. I know some of the general, issues and challenges that people are having inside the organization. I'm aware of the theme of the meeting or the theme for their year. I'm aware of some of the things that they're excited about. So I think if you do that, it doesn't matter if you're talking to a team, involved in sports, or you're in a boardroom with a bunch of executive leaders that are in real estate or finance. Like, the principles of leadership are still the same. And you're just trying to problem solve. You're trying to bring people together. You're trying to increase awareness and help people be more effective in their leadership journey. And so the parallels, the principles are the same. I think what changes is maybe the questions you ask and the way that you listen from one group to the next.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. And you brought up one of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So awesome.
Hey, shout out to John Wright Sr.
That's right. 7 Habits, man. The unforgettable book, legendary book that everyone should have as one of the staples on their library. And I talked you up a little bit in your introduction, but I do believe this, and I know you're humble, that you're one of the best communicators and speakers I know. I recently was at an event that you put on that you shared the stage with John Gordon, and I complimented you, say you not only held your own ground with John, I thought you outperformed him that day. And all due respect to John, because he's amazing and he did amazing that day. I just thought you were hugely impactful to the crowd that was listening to you that day, and it was the best I ever saw you. So I wanted to pay you that compliment. But why is effective communication so important? So this is a 2-part question. Why is it so important? And any tips to help others communicate effectively? So thinking in leadership, why is communicating effectively so important? And then how can leaders communicate effectively or practice that skill?
Well, we're always communicating. I think we have to remember that great leaders are great communicators, and great communicators make great leaders. And we're always communicating. So our nonverbal, our facial expression, the way that our body moves, our pace, our hand gestures, all of that is a form of communication. And, it's been said like 90% of your communication is nonverbal. I'm at an old mentor. He would always say, your body language never whispers, it screams. Just as leaders, we need to remember that whether you're speaking or not, whether you're opening your mouth or not, you are communicating. And your body language, your energy is putting off a vibe, and you're sharing a message, whether you know it or not. And so I think as leaders, we just want to be aware of that. I think everything starts with self-awareness. Self-awareness is the beginning of growth and development. And I think for me, I've just tried to be more in tune with how I communicate, specifically in my nonverbal, Josh, because I think your energy as a leader is where everything has to start when it comes to your communication. It's kind of like feedback. People say, well, we don't have we don't really do feedback. We don't have a feedback culture. And I always call people out on that. Like, you do have a feedback culture. You just don't have a culture of honest, helpful, and timely feedback. So we're always giving feedback. We give feedback by what we don't say, our eye contact, our hand gestures, our body language, our posture, our presence. And so I think for leaders, just to remember, whether you're speaking or not, whether you're opening your mouth or not, you're always communicating. And, great leaders are great communicators. And if we're not effective, if we're not considering how we're communicating, we're going to miss it in our leadership journey. And I'll say this. I think one of the greatest problems, George Bernard Shaw says it this way, he says the single greatest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. And I know you see this, Josh, in your work. Where I see a lot of communicators go sideways is they make assumptions that they've communicated and they fail to over communicate. And it's that old adage of, if you're not over communicating, if you don't feel like you're over communicating, you're not communicating enough. So in our work, we want to over communicate. We want to remind people over and over and over again. People need reminders more than they need advice. And so we just got to keep reminding people. We got to over communicate. We got to set expectations. We got to continue to love on people. And we need to be really careful about our nonverbal and consider, the big picture. So those are a few of my thoughts on communication. We'd love to go deeper on that topic. And again, man, I'd throw it back to you. You're a super gifted communicator. Whether you're podcasting, speaking to a group, you're one-on-one with people. I've watched you move crowds and move people and drive huge impact through your ability to communicate. And I'll also give you a shout out. I think so much of that for you is your presence. You've got a confident presence, but you also make people feel comfortable. And that's been a hallmark of your leadership journey as well.
Well, I appreciate that. Two things there that I would give the audience. One is, and I know you've heard this, I think it might have even been John Wright Sr., who's been a mentor to both of us. So we've shouted him out twice now. But one of the things is, if the leader's message isn't being mocked, they haven't quite gotten the tip or the point yet.
Yeah,
right? So once the leader's message starts being mocked, once you start being mocked as a leader, which you may like, wait a second, they're mocking me? Well, no, they've now received your message. And now they're joking about it and they get that playful banter. That means it's working. So don't get offended. Don't get insecure by any of that. That means it's working. Your message is finally landing. So go with it.
Yes.
Secondly, the confidence that I've had, I just believe that I belong in any room. Whether, you introduced me to John Gordon, who's a hero of mine. I've read every book. Like I don't have any trepidation in meeting him or shaking his hand. I don't get starstruck by that. I've actually even thought about this. The only person I think I'd ever be starstruck by, it wouldn't be a movie star. It wouldn't be a speaker or anything like, I've been able to shake hands with Andy Frisella and Ed Milet and John Gordon and some of these amazing orators. Michael Jordan, I think, would be the only person that I would actually be starstruck by, just from my childhood and just his demeanor and competitiveness and just confidence. I think that would be the only person on this planet that I would be starstruck by. So I just believe for a leader I remember a story Andy Frisella told at the last Arate event. And he talked about when it really changed for him as a speaker. He was delivering this huge keynote, and he'd been delivering keynotes for a while. And he has one of the largest podcasts, if not the largest podcast in the entrepreneur space of all time. He put on his sunglasses before he went on stage, and it was just how he was going to go on that. And he thought to himself, he just had a single thought. He goes, I'm the baddest mother effer on this planet. And it changed his whole demeanor. It changed his whole talk. And that's the message that he repeats in his head before he goes on stage and he goes, why wouldn't I believe that about myself? If I'm there to impact, I have to have that confidence to go out there and spread my message and have the maximum impact possible to all that are going to receive it. Instead of thinking, is everyone going to receive this properly? Is someone going to be offended by what I say here? Do I have these words just right? No, go out with the confidence that you're going to impact at least one person in that room. But it'll probably be thousands.
So good. And I think the point there, Josh, is that it's not everyone, right? So if there's 500 people in a room, the chances of you being everyone's cup of tea are almost zero, In fact, if you are everyone's cup of tea, you probably didn't do your job, right? So I think what Andy knows and what you know as a communicator is that your message is going to land with certain people, and with other people, it won't land the same way. And it's not to say that we don't have a values-based message that's, wholesome and inclusive, but it is to say that there are certain people in that room that need your brand, that need your message, that need your story that they can relate to. And when I stopped worrying about being everybody's cup of tea, I focused in on the few instead of the 1,000-person room. I think I became a better communicator because you are more confident and you can stand really firm in your messaging when you just accept the fact that, hey, not everybody's going to love me, and that's okay. I'm still going to give an inclusive message that's for all people. But what I know is I came here today to impact some people that need specifically what I have to offer. And so for anybody that's communicating publicly, stand firm in that. Don't worry about the crowd, worry about the few that you're called to impact.
That's so good. All right. So let's move on to authenticity. One of the things I've heard you say often is you are most effective when you are most authentic. And by the way, if you guys have heard this so far, Jordan is really gifted at memorizing quotes and repeating quotes, really gifted. I can memorize movie quotes pretty dang well. I can repeat to you all of Anchorman, all of Talladega Nights, all of Zoolander, but Jordan can memorize, and it's a true gift, some really important and impactful quotes. But I think this one is yours. You are most effective when you are most authentic. So why is that so important for leaders to understand? Why do you repeat it so often?
I just want to highlight there, if Ashley Montgomery was listening in, she would say, he can't remember where he set his keys or where he put his wallet, but man, he can remember a quote. So anyway,
or his luggage for that matter,
or luggage. Yeah. You know that all too well. So selective memory, Josh. Yeah, I think the reason it's important to me is because for so long I've struggled with it. If I'm being candid, and you know this about my journey and my background, I think I used to be a very inauthentic leader. I was an inauthentic person, and I cared way too much about what people thought of me. And I'm still struggling with that today. I haven't totally overcome, but God's helped me a lot with that. And I think he's just teaching me that, that I'm unique and that people are unique, and he's wired us all in a different way. And if I'm trying to be somebody I'm not, then one of me is irrelevant. And I don't want to live an irrelevant life. I don't think God put me here to be irrelevant. I don't want to have an irrelevant purpose. God designed me with a purpose. I have a calling. He has a plan for my life. And so for me to pursue him and to pursue that calling, I need to really work hard at being me. And I think the reason we struggle with authenticity is because we struggle with comparison. I've struggled with comparison, So quote, Craig Rochelle says, the quickest way to kill something special is to compare it to something else. And the reality is that what you have is special. You've got special gifts. You have special abilities. I'd like to think that God deposited some things in me that are unique, that he designed me in a specific way. And so I don't want to get into, who I am versus who Josh is versus who somebody else is. And it's taken me a while to grow in my confidence and become more secure in myself. But the last thing I'll say on this topic before I turn it back to you, we live in a really, really fake, artificial, superficial world. And now more than ever, authenticity stands out. So if there was ever a time to take a stand and say, hey, this is who I am. These are some of my flaws, these are some of my issues, and not do it in a way, because there's a wrong way to do that, right? I think sometimes people do that for attention, or they try to really stand out by, drawing attention to those things. But just to be you and to be okay with, I've got weaknesses, I've got faults. Heck, I can even shine a spotlight on that. I'm willing to own that, to tell you about it. I think people are drawn to that. There is a vulnerability and a transparency that people are so acutely drawn to. And it starts with just being yourself and owning, all of who you are. And I've watched you do that too, more specifically over the last few years. I've just watched you step into your giftedness and your calling and fulfilling the purpose that God has for your life. And so yeah, man, I know that's important to you as well. And I do believe that we're most effective when we're most authentic.
Yeah, said differently on your comparison quote, is comparison is the thief of joy, right? So
Yes.
There's so much to be said about, comparison taking away, when if we just give ourselves, we're going to connect so much further. And the other piece of it that stood out to me as you were talking there is you have the ability to connect at such a deeper level when you're being truly you, and not a fake you, not a fake version of you, or not faking vulnerability for the sake of, hey, well, Josh and Jordan said being vulnerable was good, or being authentic or was good, because people can read right through that. Authenticity in itself is pure. And when someone's being truly authentic, we can not only see that, we can feel that. Whereas I think you briefly mentioned this, but to take it a little bit further, there's many people that'll go on Facebook or Instagram or any social media and somewhat fake authenticity by giving this kind of sob story, which turns more into like victimhood than it is being authentic. But it's in the spirit of being authentic and the spirit of being vulnerable, but they're doing it wrong. So don't go out there just because we said to be authentic and give a sob story about where you've been and where you're going, just to get kind of likes and attention. Because there's a lot of people on Facebook, and I'll tell you what, the number one way for me to unfollow an acquaintance, a friend, anything on social media is if you are being a professional victim on social media to get attention from inauthentic people who are just going to be like thoughts and prayers or whatever it might be, and not reaching for real connection. So please take that advice, is if you're going to be authentic, it is one of the purest forms of being a human being. You have to be truly authentic and not doing it for social media attention.
Yeah, that's so well said, man. And, you and I have talked about this idea of being an artist before. I want to share this with, so somebody listening might need to hear this. The analogy is, and here's what I'd say to you, to anybody listening. We all have fans, right? You've got followers, you have fans, you have people that love you, that love your content, that love your messaging, and that number is going to continue to grow over time. But I think sometimes what we do is we forsake those people because we're trying to pursue people who don't really matter to us, and they really never will. They're on the fringe, and we end up forsaking the people that matter most for the people who are on the fringe. It'd be like if you were an artist at a concert and you're in the middle of a set, right? You're on your fourth or fifth song. You've got great momentum. The crowd's going crazy. There's people dancing by the stage. They're having a great time. They're into you. They're buying you. They're following you. And somebody comes out on stage and they whisper into your ear, right? They kind of, hey, pause the show. I got something for you. And they let you know that there's somebody outside the concert that is like protesting the concert, right? They got a sign that says, I think your music sucks, right? And it would be like setting down your guitar or your instrument, pulling away the microphone and saying, guys, listen, I got to stop the show. I'm sorry. I know you're having a good time. I know that you're following some of the stuff that we're doing here, but I need to just pause this whole thing because I got to go address that person outside of the arena who didn't buy the ticket, who's holding up a sign.
That's such a good analogy.
Like we do that, we stop the show, we forsake the people, we quiet the music for that person who didn't buy the ticket. And so the reminder is you have fans, play your music for the people who are listening. And as that number grows, so too will the number of people grow outside the arena. Our job is to play the music for the people that bought the ticket. They're in the arena. They're following your work. They're following your music. They're having a good time, and they're being impacted by who you are and what you do. So I like to think about it that way. Like we're all artists. You've got a crowd, be it large or small. I don't care if it's 5 people, 500 people, or 5,000 people. There are people at your show, and they need you to keep playing the music.
And you have no idea the impact you have on those you lead, and you have no idea who you're leading at times.
Amen.
And I found that out with 75 Hard. I had people reaching out to me that were following my journey that I haven't spoken to since high school, or that were Jenna's like fringe family members that we really don't even know that well. Like it was really cool to see that they were inspired by my journey. So again, you have no idea the impact you have on those that you lead, and therefore don't even know who you're leading sometimes.
That's right.
Such a good analogy for those to remember. So we started talking about a little bit of vulnerability. Let's lean into that. Alpha vulnerability is a phrase I coined because I believe that you can be both an alpha and vulnerable at the same time. And I believe you do this well. I don't think you've always done it well, but I think you're doing it really well right now. So why is it so important to be vulnerable as a leader?
Well, vulnerability begets vulnerability. And I think at the end of the day, we all want to be real. You want someone to know the real you. Like we all want to be seen. We want to be known. It's the most basic human need, is just the need to be known. But for me to be known, for somebody to truly know me, I have to be real with other people. And so I'm likely to follow a leader who's real. I'm likely to be more vulnerable with a leader who's vulnerable. And vulnerability begets vulnerability. Craig, we always talk about Craig Groeschel, but I just think he's got such great substance on the subject matter. He said people can be impressed with your strengths, but they connect to you through your weaknesses. So if we want to connect with people, if we want to build real, meaningful relationships, then as leaders, we have to do a better job of showing people the real us, and I'm not talking about just like owning mistakes or saying I'm sorry when you mess up. It's like, hey, I want to tell you a few things about who I am and where I struggle. And we all know, like when somebody shares that from a stage or they share that in front of the room, like we're like, I like this person. Like this is my kind of guy, or this is my kind of gal, like when in our coaching practice, Josh, when we're onboarding a client or we're in a kind of a discovery conversation, and I'll do this with NFL athletes and NBA players. And like we have people of influence that we're having conversations with. And I'll just lead with like, hey, I need to tell you who I'm not. This is who I'm not. These are things I am not good at. And I need you to know that. And so I want to call these things out up front and just make you aware of some areas where I'm not going to be able to help you. And I can feel it when I lead that way, rather than leading with my strengths and all the reasons that they should hire us and work with us. It is a different type of conversation that leads to a different type of connection. So again, people want real. And back to your alpha vulnerability thing, I love that. Brene Brown says the first real step in courage is vulnerability. It's taking the armor off and it's letting people see who you really are. That's courage. It's freaking hard. None of us enjoy doing it. But when you're willing to do it, you connect with people in a completely different way.
And if you're in sales, I hope you really listen to that there, because what Jordan's saying, I'm selling this NBA player, this NFL player on my services, but how I'm doing that is telling them who I'm not first. And that's like the complete opposite of most sales training, right? Is most sales training is like, you're going to lead with strengths and you're going to tell them all the things you can do for them. And we've seen this in financial services. We see it in, realty. We see it in mortgages. We see it in every different thing, every different walk of life in sales. But if you can lead with who you're not and then get to your strengths, it opens you up. It lets down their wall. Is what you're saying. Like it lets them know that, oh, this is a real person I'm talking to. They're not just trying to sell me.
That's it.
So good.
Yeah. I think confident humility is the most attractive quality in a leader, so to your point, you can still be really confident in who you are and what you do and what is, but you're willing to own what isn't and what you're not. And, it's like, you should never trust a financial advisor that can't say the words, I don't know. Like, I don't know is actually a really attractive statement for a financial advisor to make, or for any leader to make. Like, I don't know everything. And it's not that I'm minimizing the answer. I'm going to go get the answer if I don't know something. And if it's important to my audience, it's just, I got to be willing to say, I don't know. And here's what it is, Josh. I believe it's a trust and credibility multiplier. It multiplies trust. It multiplies credibility, because down the road, there's going to be a bigger question. There's going to be a more important conversation. And if I was willing to say, I don't know, and own that in a small moment, it means I'm more likely to be trusted down the road when the stakes are higher. So I think this whole idea of leading through vulnerability, doing it the right way, by the way, and here's, because we get this question, people will say, well, how do I know if it's the right timing? Like, I've been through something really significant and I think I'm ready to share it, but I don't know. Here's how you know if it's the right time to share. You're ready to share your story. You're ready to share what you've been through to the benefit of others, to serve others, if you can share it in a way that no longer affects your current identity. So for a long time, I could not share my story because it still was affecting my current identity. And I got to a place where I was okay sharing it, because I had written a few more chapters. God had worked on my heart. My life had taken some different twists and turns. And I thought, okay, God, like, I'm now ready to share. When I share this, it still may be uncomfortable at times or whatever, but it doesn't affect my identity. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, these guys are talking about like vulnerability, I'm not even sure if I can be that, or when to be that, or what's the right timing. It's right when it no longer affects your current identity. And I'd love for you to piggyback on that, Josh, because I know, you've had to work in this area of vulnerability, and that's been a lifelong journey for you as well. And we've both been through heavy stuff, hard stuff. I think that's one thing that sort of unifies us in our friendship. So anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I love all of what you just said. And I just want to, that identity piece in what you went through, what I went through. There's so much blame to be had in both situations that you and I both went through. And we don't have enough time to get into either situation today. But what I want to say to that identity piece is that you have to, I think when I was ready to tell a story, I know when you were ready to tell your story is when you could accept blame and not place blame. Mm-hmm. And because there was a lot of blame you could have placed on another individual in your situation. There's a lot of blame I could place on a company, an individual, multiple individuals. There was a lot of bad things, but like the bottom line is what happened. And we could remain spiteful and bitter and jealous and envious and all these different bad traits, or we could focus on the gifts that were given to us and focus on the future and the good things that have come from those situations and trusting God's timing and trusting God's grace.
Yeah. So good. And man, isn't it attractive when somebody's willing to ask the question, what part of the problem is me?
Yeah.
You know, Tim Bohannon gave me one of the greatest gifts, which is that question. He listened to me wallow in my issue and complain and place blame and point the finger for about 30 days. And you know Tim well, he's a mentor in my life that was sort of there for me when the chips were down, much like you were, Josh. And eventually he said, Jordan, I think there's a question that will set you free. The question will set you free. The answer is even more important. The question is, what part of the problem is me? And when you start to answer that question, man, you'll be redeemed. Your life will be put back together. Maybe not like you expect it to be put back together, but when you can really answer that question, ask the question, your life will move in a different direction. And it did. And look, like when we deny the story, it defines us. When we own the story, we can write a brand new ending. I didn't want to be defined by my failure. I didn't want to be defined by the thing that I went through. And my thing, just for anybody listening, it's like, well, what did he go through? Like I got let go of a company, of a major company at a young age because I was careless. And I could say, no, it was this and it was that. And no, like at the end of the day, I had a casual spirit. I ran too fast. I didn't dot the I's. I didn't cross the T's. There's a person on my team that took a test. It shouldn't have happened. I should have reported it. I didn't when I found out about it, and it cost me my job. And what I noticed is when I started owning that, and when I just said, you know what, I made a mistake. My relationships changed. My peace and contentment changed. And other leaders looked at me and I was like, I've made a mistake. Like, yeah, I've been there. I get that, but when we're filled with bitterness and we're like, well, this person and this happened, and if they wouldn't have done it, then this never would have happened. It's like, God, I don't want to be around that person. Like, actually, I don't even really care about what happened. Their spirit is one of like bitterness and anger and frustration. And I actually just want to be around people who are like positive and abundant and who can, own their mistakes, because we all make mistakes. I'm like, I don't even really care what happened. I just want to know that you can own your story and you've decided to move on. Those are the kind of people that I want to be around.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, what are we even talking about? Like, my life is good, like your life is good. Like you have a healthy, beautiful family. Like I have a healthy, beautiful family. There's so much good to focus on. And I want to focus on that. I want to work on that. And for somebody that's struggling, maybe you're in the middle of that. You're like, yeah, but gosh, right now is really freaking hard. Just remember this, like sometimes you feel like in the darkness, you've been buried and you've actually been planted, and God will use what you went through for good if you allow him to. Sometimes your greatest ministry comes out of your deepest hurt. And I can say that, Josh, and you can say that. And I've lived that. And I'm not saying that God causes things to happen. I think sometimes he allows things to happen. And wow, we could just be incredible change agents in this world when we choose to move forward and say, hey, I'm going to own it and I'm going to choose good. My God is my God. His promises are true. It says, Jeremiah 29:11, right? The promises he has for you, the plans he has for you, says the Lord, is for a hope and a future. It's to put your life back together. He wants you to experience joy and to live a healthy, abundant, positive life. He doesn't say it'll be easy, but he does say it'll be worth it. And that's the promise that I want to cling to.
That's a good promise to cling to. We just brought up family, and let's talk a little bit about that. You travel quite a bit. And you also are one of the best fathers that I know. And so I just thought maybe we could spend a little time on some advice that you have for those working mothers, working fathers that are traveling a bit or are just working a lot. And I'll also say this, when you're not traveling, you have a slew of people that are calling you, texting you, needing you because you coach them. You are the leader in their life. So what are some tips and tricks and just ideas that you may have to encourage and pour into some of these working mothers, working fathers that don't feel like they're being enough on the home front?
This is such an important topic. And I'm going to throw this back to you because I could say the same thing about how you lead Jenna and your kiddos. Here's what I'm learning as you grow in your influence and your experience, you have fewer people around you who are willing to be really honest. And we have to value those relationships in a different way. If someone's willing to be honest with you, they are valuable to you. Truth trumps flattery. And the reality is, as you're growing your influence, you get fewer people who are willing to give you the truth. So one is we got to surround ourselves with people who are willing to be honest, and they are not impressed by us. And I'm thankful to have some people in my life, and you're one of them. It's like, hey, dude, I promise you that I will call you upward if I see you step out of line in your marriage. I promise you, I will call you upward if I see you step out of line with your kids. And you've done that for me. Actually, several years ago, we were in Denver, Colorado. And I remember just very specifically you saying like, hey man, you travel a lot. Like you might need to dial that back. And you just asked me some really intentional questions about my marriage. And so I want people like you in my life, Josh, who are not impressed by me and they're willing to ask me the hard questions. And they're not calling me out. They're not making me feel bad. They're calling me up. There's a difference between calling somebody upward and calling somebody out. Yeah. And so you've always been a person who's called me up. And I've appreciated that. And then the second thing I would give to people listening is get a coach specifically in that area of your life. Ashley and I have learned this over the last 2 years. You know, I got coaching in every area of my life, physical fitness, my mental game, had a business coach, a life coach, had a pastor, had some close friends who were like accountability partners. So I'd, have a financial advisor, have an attorney, have an accountant. You get all of this help in all of these really important areas of your life. The most important area of my life, next to my relationship with Jesus, is my relationship with my wife, Ashley. And I was getting zero help in that area of my life. So we hired a team, Jill and Mark Savage, their husband and wife, and they do marriage coaching. And we spend 90 minutes with them once a month, not because anything is wrong, but because we want our marriage to stay strong and healthy. And we have a zillion issues that we work through. I mean, every call is something new and something different. And there's a lot of reoccurring themes that we have to work through.
And you're 90% of them, but
I'm 90%
who's
of the
counting?
issues. Yes, that's right. Ashley would tell you. But it has just been the best and most healthy thing. Like I will say it is the best money that we spend. It's the best time that we spend because I'm a better parent. I'm a better businessman. I'm a better friend. I'm a better leader when things are right in my marriage. And so get help, get a coach. I would be happy if somebody wants to know more about Mark and Jill, like I would put you in touch. They're one of many who do that work. It's faith-based work. It's rooted in scripture. For us, that's very meaningful. But get around some people who aren't impressed by you, who are willing to challenge you and get some Josh Kosniks in your life. And then get a coach specifically for that area of your life. When I'm right with Ashley too, Josh, I'm right with my kids. I just believe in a firm order of loves that it's Jesus, it's my wife, and it's my kids. If my kids start to become more important than my wife, things don't seem to work. I think God's design was, hey, I need you to lead your wife and be really invested with your wife first. And by the way, kids see that. And so the best thing I could do for my kids, for my children, is to love my wife. And, that type of work, that type of investment, that type of help has been profoundly important in that area of my life. So I'll throw the same thing back to you. Anything you want to share? Because I've watched you just lead like crazy. Actually, really in the last 2 years specifically, I've always admired you as a husband and father, but I feel like you've gone to another level in your discipline as a father and husband.
Well, I think that both of us would say that we can always do better. So I don't by any means want to claim that either of us are perfect by any means. I think we're always trying to get better and be that example for our children, for our spouses, for our marriage. But thank you for the compliment. And yes, day we just did. So you just saw me post about that.
80 pictures. Let's go.
The totally 80s pictures it was awesome. They had so much fun with that. So that'll be an experience that we remember for a long time. So for those that aren't familiar, there was a movie called Yes Day. The kids fell in love with it. Then they started asking us about, can we do this? Last summer, we were like, hey, yeah, let's do it. We're going to put some boundaries on it. That is a great thing. Just creating family experiences, whether you do a yes day or not. And I have some rules and whatnot, ground rules for that are very important to set before you do a yes day. But one of the things I would say about travel for me, this may not be the same for you because you're traveling more for work, but I made a promise a couple of years back that it was really to myself. It wasn't even to Jenna or the kids. It was that if I am going to travel and spend this time away from my family, that I come back a better man. So if I go to meet with you and the study group, the Gray Geese, like I know I'm going to come back a better man. We're going to have fun. We're going to learn. We're going to pour into each other. We're going to challenge each other, all that different stuff. If I go to an Arete Syndicate thing as I'm conversing with like-minded people, entrepreneurs, I'm hearing from Ed Milet and Andy Frisella, like I'm coming back a better man. And it could be fun as well. Maybe sometimes you need a reprieve, right? It could be just a fun trip. And that's that reprieve and that time that you get to yourself with your friends or just even by yourself, that you come back a better man or a better woman. Right. I would just encourage people to think about time away from your family. How do you come back better?
So good. I love that. How do you come back better? I'm going to make a commitment to myself that when I travel, I come back a better man, better husband, better father. Yeah. And I just, one other thing I'd add to that, Josh, I think it's important that as we continue to influence and grow in our work, grow professionally, that we keep it in mind. I want to be respected most by people who know me the best.
That's so good. I've heard you say that before and I love it.
Because it's just like, man, it's hard. Like we're all striving and we want to impact more people and serve more people. But the reality is if the people closest to us don't respect us and we win the praise of people that barely know us, like that's not leadership. That's not impact. So I want to be respected most by people who know me the best.
Yeah. All right. Last question, because I know we're running up on time. Fail fast, fail often, fail well. That's something the Montgomery Companies talks about often. And how you teach your clients to embody that mantra. So tell us about the power of that mantra.
Well, fail fast. First off, if you're not failing fast, if you're not figuring out what doesn't work, you're slower to figure out what does. So want to take chances. I just believe the emotional risk that we take is directly tied to the opportunity that we create. So anything worth it is going to involve some level of risk, and specifically, I think emotional risk. There's some discomfort. There's an unknown. I got to have some sweaty palms. I got to be weak in the knees. I want to feel that more often. I want to fail fast. I want to figure out what doesn't work so I can get on with what does. Fail often. I believe if we're not failing on a regular basis, we're likely not moving forward. Failure is a part of progress. It's actually the first step in achievement and true success. So, I always say that the people with the most awards are typically the biggest rejects. They've been told no more. They've fallen flat on their face more. They've looked silly more. They've been embarrassed more. So I just want to fail often, even in my own life. Like I want to continue to fail because it means I'm growing and I'm attempting new things. And then fail forward. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, winners lose more than losers lose, period. So if I'm going to win, I need to continue to fail. And it's a choice to say, I'm going to watch the game film. I'm going to ask the question, what did I learn? I'm going to evaluate the problem, the issue, the failure, and I'm going to move on. So many people fail to do that. They're not watching the game film. They're not asking the question, what did I learn? Again, they're pointing a finger or they're stuck in bitterness or anger. A really important question when you fail, when things don't go the way that you thought they would go, is to say, hey, what did I learn? How can I improve next time? I'm going to go back and evaluate that mistake so that I can get better and grow from it. So when I think about that mantra, Josh, those are some of the thoughts that cross my mind.
Well, that's a great way to end it. That's some great stuff right there. So I can understand the mantra, and I hope everyone caught that, because failure is a part of success. In fact, it might be the most crucial part of success, like Jordan said. So, brother, it was so good to spend time with you today. Anytime I get with you is great. And I know the audience is really going to love what you had to say today and the conversation had. I know you always need more social media followers. So he's really hurting everyone. So tell everyone where they can follow you.
Yeah. Well, hey, I will say this, man. Somebody wants to reach out. If you got a question, a thought, a comment, something you want to share, question you want to ask, send me a DM on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Would love to respond to be helpful. But Instagram, we're at Jordan M. Montgomery. Facebook, easy to find. LinkedIn, pretty active. So yeah, reach out. Would love to be helpful, have a conversation, and stay connected.
I joke because he's blowing up and he has a lot of followers, but he is very connected with the people that are following and will answer questions, as he said. So by all means, follow Jordan, reach out. Like I said, he's one of the most dynamic speakers and coaches that I know, but even better, he's a better person. So for everyone listening today, I hope you took a lot out of this episode. Rewind, take notes, do whatever you got to do. Share the episode over and over again, please, because there's so much great content spoken of today. And remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.